The two suns of Karath-7 burned like angry eyes in the orange sky. The heat was terrible. It was the kind of heat that could kill a man if he stayed outside too long. The red sand stretched in every direction, making endless dunes that looked like frozen waves on a dead ocean. Taiho wiped the sweat from his face and continued working on the broken machine. He was a mechanic, one of the few humans willing to work this far from Earth. Out here, in the frontier space controlled by the Dominion, humans were not respected. The aliens who ruled these stars saw humans as simple creatures, barely smarter than animals. Some alien species even kept humans as pets or slaves on their home worlds. But Taiho did not care what the aliens thought. He was good at fixing things, and the pay was excellent. He had been at Dust Haven Outpost for 3 years now, repairing ships and machines for anyone who could afford his services. The outpost was small and ugly. It was just a collection of metal buildings half buried in the sand to escape the heat. About 50 workers lived there, mostly aliens from different species, with only a handful of humans. They survived by offering repairs and supplies to ships passing through this empty region of space. Taiho was tightening a bolt when he heard the sound. It was a terrible screaming noise, like metal being torn apart. He looked up and saw a ship falling from the sky. Black smoke poured from its engines. Fire licked along its wings. It was not gliding down for a landing. It was falling like a stone. The ship hit the sand about 3 kilometers away, but it did not stop there. It kept going, diving into a massive dune like a knife into flesh. Sand exploded into the air in a huge cloud. When the dust settled, the ship was gone. It had buried itself completely under the dune. Taiho stood frozen for a moment. He had seen crashes before. They happened often in this dangerous region, but he had never seen a ship bury itself like that. It was almost like someone had driven it into the ground on purpose. He grabbed his scanner and pointed it at the distant dune. The device hummed as it searched for life signs. After a few seconds, it beeped. There was one living creature inside that buried ship, but the life sign was weak and getting weaker with every passing moment. Taiho started walking toward the storage area to get his emergency equipment. Before he could reach it, a thick hand grabbed his arm and pulled him back. He turned to see Borvac, his supervisor. Borvac was a Grellian, a species with 4 arms and gray skin that looked like wet stone. His wide face showed worry. "I know what you are thinking, human," Borvac said through his translator device. "Do not do it." "Someone is dying out there," Taiho replied. "Look at the markings on that ship." Borvac pointed with one of his 4 hands. "That silver spiral, that is a Valori transport." Taiho felt his stomach tighten. The Valori were the most powerful species in the Dominion. They looked like the dragons from old Earth stories, with huge, scaled bodies, powerful wings, and long tails. They stood 7 meters tall and breathed fire when angry. They believed they were gods among the stars, perfect beings meant to rule over all other species, and they treated humans worse than dirt. On Valori worlds, humans were bought and sold like animals. They were forced to work, to fight for entertainment, or simply kept as exotic pets. The Valori saw nothing wrong with this. To them, humans were just clever beasts. "That is Valori business," Borvac continued. "Whatever happened to that ship, it is not your problem. If you go out there and interfere, you could make powerful enemies. I cannot just let someone die." "A Valori, human. A Valori is dying out there." Borvac's voice became harsh. "They would not lift a single claw to save you. If you were dying in that sand, they would step over your body without a second thought. They might even laugh. Why should you risk your life for them?" Taiho looked at the distant dune. The scanner in his hand showed the life sign growing weaker. Whoever was in that ship did not have much time. The heat inside the buried vessel must be incredible. The person was cooking alive. He thought about what Borvac said. It was true. The Valori were cruel. They had done terrible things to humans. They saw his entire species as property, as things to be owned and used. If the situation were reversed, no Velori would save him. They would probably enjoy watching him suffer. But Taiho was not Velori. He pulled his arm free from Borvak's grip. "That is not how humans work," he said quietly. Borvak stared at him with all four of his eyes. "You are a fool." "Maybe." Taiho walked to the storage room and grabbed his emergency excavation kit. It contained a plasma cutter, a portable cooling unit, and other tools he might need. He also grabbed extra water and checked his protective suit. "If you die out there," Borvak called after him, "I am not writing a report about it. As far as I am concerned, you were never my worker." Taiho did not answer. He was already walking toward the exit. The heat hit him like a wall when he stepped outside. His suit began working immediately, trying to keep his body cool. He had maybe 2 hours before the suit would fail and the desert would kill him. He started running toward the dune, his feet sinking into the soft red sand with every step. Behind him, the other workers watched in silence. Some thought he was brave. Most thought he was insane. Perhaps both things were true. Ahead of him, buried under tons of burning sand, someone was waiting to die. And Taiho was the only one foolish enough to care. The sand was everywhere. It filled Taiho's boots, scratched against his suit, and tried to swallow him with every step. The red dunes seemed alive, shifting and moving under the burning wind. Above him, the twin suns showed no mercy. His suit told him the surface temperature was 63 degrees, hot enough to cook meat, hot enough to kill an unprotected human in minutes. The suit was working hard to keep him alive, but he could feel the heat pressing against him from all sides, like invisible hands. Taiho reached the base of the massive dune where the ship had buried itself. He looked up at the mountain of sand and felt small. The ship was somewhere under all of that. The scanner showed it was about 15 meters deep. That was a lot of digging. He started immediately. There was no time to waste. The life sign on his scanner was getting weaker with every minute. Whoever was inside that ship was dying. As he dug, Taiho used his scanner to study the crashed vessel. What he found made him stop and stare at the screen. The ship had not simply crashed. Someone had programmed it to crash. The navigation system had been changed, modified to point the ship directly at this dune at full speed. The safety systems had been turned off. The pilot controls had been locked. Someone had wanted this ship to bury itself. Someone had wanted whoever was inside to die slowly, trapped under tons of sand, feeling the weight pressing down, knowing that no help would come. It was not an accident. It was murder. The cruelty of it made Taiho's stomach turn. What kind of creature would do something like this? To trap someone in a metal coffin and bury them alive in a hot desert was beyond evil. It was the act of a monster. He dug faster. 40 minutes passed. His muscles burned. His throat was dry despite drinking all his water. The suit was starting to fail, its cooling system overheating from the constant work. Warning lights flashed on his display. He ignored them. Finally, his shovel hit metal. He had reached the ship's hull. Taiho cleared away more sand until he found a section of the hull that was thin enough to cut. He pulled out his plasma cutter and turned it on. The tool screamed as it bit into the metal, sending sparks flying into the air. The sound was terrible in the quiet desert. When he finally cut through, a blast of superheated air exploded from the hole. It was like opening a door to hell. The temperature inside the ship was even worse than outside. Anyone in there should already be dead. But the scanner still showed a life sign. Weak, but still there. Taiho squeezed through the hole he had made. The inside of the ship was dark and full of smoke. Emergency lights flickered red, giving everything a blood-colored glow. Metal beams had fallen from the ceiling during the crash. Pieces of the ship were scattered everywhere, and there, in the middle of the destruction, he saw her. She was a Violori, but not like any Violori Taiho had seen before. She was smaller than the warriors and nobles he had encountered, maybe only 4 meters long instead of the usual 7. Her scales were a deep purple color, beautiful like a night sky, instead of the common gold or red. Her wings were crushed under fallen beams. Her breathing was slow and shallow. But the thing that shocked Taiho most was the collar around her neck. It was a control collar, the kind used on slaves. Metal and glowing with cruel technology, designed to cause pain if the wearer disobeyed. This Violori was not a master. She was property. Someone had buried their own slave alive. The Violori's eyes opened slowly. They were gold, bright even in the dim light, and filled with confusion and pain. She looked at Taiho for a long moment, as if trying to understand what she was seeing. Human. Her voice was barely a whisper. Her translator device crackled and sparked, damaged in the crash. You should leave me. Taiho moved closer, examining the beams that trapped her. I am here to help you. My master will not reward you for this. She coughed, smoke escaping from her nostrils. He wanted me to die here. He will be angry if you save me. I do not care about rewards. The Violori stared at him. Her gold eyes were filled with something strange. It took Taiho a moment to recognize it. It was complete confusion. She could not understand why he was helping her. In her world, creatures helped each other for gain, for profit, for power. The idea of helping someone simply because they needed help was foreign to her. Then you are a fool, she said finally. Taiho positioned himself under the heaviest beam. It was massive, far too heavy for a normal human to move. But he had to try. He pushed with all his strength, feeling his muscles scream in protest. The beam did not move. He pushed again and again. He thought about giving up. The beam was too heavy. The heat was too strong. His suit was failing. He was just one small human against all of this. But then he thought about the collar around her neck. He thought about someone deciding that she was garbage, something to be thrown away. He thought about the cruelty of burying a living creature in burning sand. And he pushed harder than he had ever pushed before. The beam shifted, just a little, but it was enough. Can you move? He asked, his voice tight with effort. The Violori pulled herself forward, dragging her broken wings behind her. Inch by inch, she crawled out from under the fallen metal. Taiho's arms shook. His vision was going dark at the edges, but he held on. When she was finally free, he let go and collapsed beside her. They both lay there in the ruined ship, breathing hard, surrounded by smoke and heat. Why? She asked again, her voice full of wonder. Taiho could barely speak. His whole body hurt. His suit was screaming warnings at him. They were not safe yet. They still had to get out of this buried ship, climb through 15 meters of sand, and somehow make it back to the outpost before they both died. But he looked at her and smiled. Because you needed help, he said. That is the only reason I need. The Violori had no response to this. In all her long life, no one had ever said such a thing to her. She did not know what to make of this strange, small, impossibly stubborn human. But she was beginning to think that perhaps she had much to learn about his species. Getting out of the buried ship was harder than getting in. The Violori was too weak to fly, and her wings were badly damaged. She could barely walk. Taiho had to support her as they climbed through the tunnel he had dug, pushing through the hot sand meter by meter. She was heavy, so incredibly heavy. Even though she was small for her species, she still weighed several times more than Taiho. Her scales pressed against his shoulder, hot from the burning environment. His legs shook with every step. His suit had stopped cooling properly. He could feel himself cooking inside it. But he did not stop. When they finally broke through to the surface, the desert air felt almost cool compared to the hellish temperature inside the ship. The twin suns were lower now, touching the horizon, painting the sky in shades of red and purple. Taiho took a deep breath and started walking toward the distant outpost. "Put me down," the Vailori said. Her voice was weak, but proud. "I am too heavy for you. You will die trying to carry me." "Then we will die together," Taiho replied. He kept walking. "That is stupid." "Probably." The journey back took forever. Taiho's memory of it would always be unclear, like a fever dream. He remembered the sand pulling at his feet. He remembered the weight on his back that seemed to grow heavier with every step. He remembered falling 3 times and getting up 3 times. He remembered the Vailori speaking to him, asking him questions, trying to keep him awake. Her name was Nari. She told him this somewhere during that endless walk. She had been a scholar once, a studier of ancient languages and forgotten histories. Her family had been important among the Vailori, respected and powerful. But her father had made enemies in the political courts. He had spoken against the wrong people, criticized the wrong traditions. For this crime, her entire family was destroyed. Her parents were killed. Her siblings were scattered across distant worlds, and Nari herself was made a slave, given to a cruel lord named Dokran as payment for her father's debts. Dokran had used her for many years. She worked in his library, translating old texts, finding valuable information in forgotten archives. But she had grown old for a slave, less useful than she once was. Dokran had decided to get rid of her, but killing a slave openly would make him look wasteful. It might cause talk among the other lords. So he had chosen a different way, a tragic accident in the frontier wastes, the ship's systems failing, a crash in an empty desert where no one would investigate, where no one would care about one dead slave, no one except a human mechanic who should have minded his own business. When they finally reached Dust Haven, Taiho could barely see. His vision was blurry with heat and exhaustion. He heard voices shouting. He felt hands grabbing him, pulling the weight off his back. And then everything went dark. He woke up in the outpost's medical room. The first thing he saw was a human face looking down at him with worried eyes. It was Yuna, the outpost's doctor. She was one of only 4 humans at Dust Haven, and Taiho's oldest friend. They had come to the frontier together many years ago. "You are an idiot," she said softly. There were tears in her eyes. "How is she?" Taiho's voice was rough like sand. Yuna did not answer immediately. She helped him drink some water first, supporting his head with gentle hands. When he had finished, she sat back and sighed. "She will live. Her wings are badly damaged and may never heal properly. She has burns on her scales and smoke damage in her lungs, but she is strong. She will survive." Yuna paused. "Thanks to you." Taiho tried to sit up. His whole body screamed in protest. "I need to see her." "You need to rest. You almost died out there, Taiho. Your suit failed completely during the last kilometer. By all logic, you should be dead." "But I am not." "No, you are not." Yuna shook her head slowly. "I do not understand you. She is Vailori. They hate us. They own us on their worlds. They treat us like animals. Why did you risk everything for her?" Taiho thought about this question. It was the same question Borvak had asked. The same question Nari herself had asked. Everyone wanted to know why. They expected some clever reason, some hidden motivation. They could not accept the simple truth. "Because she was dying," he said finally, "and I could help. That is all." Yuna stared at him for a long moment. Then she laughed quietly and wiped her eyes. "You have not changed since we were children. Always picking up wounded animals, always bringing home broken things to fix." She stood up. "Fine. I will take you to see her, but only for a few minutes." The Valori was in the largest room of the medical area, the only space big enough for her body. She was lying on a special platform that Yuna had built quickly from spare parts. Her purple scales looked dull and damaged, covered in healing paste. Her wings were wrapped in bandages. The control collar was still around her neck, but her eyes were open, and when she saw Tai-Ho enter, something changed in them. Something soft appeared in their golden depths. "Human," she said. Her voice was stronger now. "You did not die. Neither did you. It seems we are both survivors." She tried to move, then stopped with a sound of pain. "I have been thinking about what you did, about why you did it. I still do not understand, but I am beginning to think that understanding is not necessary." She looked directly at him. "I owe you a debt. Among my people, that is a sacred thing. I will find a way to repay you." Tai-Ho shook his head. "You do not owe me anything." "I do, and I will repay it. This is not a matter of your choice, human. It is a matter of mine." Before Tai-Ho could respond, the door opened behind him. Borvak entered, his 4 arms crossed over his chest, his face twisted with worry. "We have a problem," the Grellian said. "A big problem. I just received a signal from orbit. There is a ship approaching. A Vailori ship." He looked at Nari, then back at Tai-Ho. "Her master has sent hunters. They are coming to collect his property, and they will be here in 3 days." The room fell silent. Yuna grabbed Tai-Ho's arm in fear. Nari closed her eyes, accepting her fate. But Tai-Ho stood straighter. His body still hurt. He was still exhausted, but his eyes were hard. "Then we have 3 days to prepare," he said. Borvak stared at him. "Prepare for what? You cannot fight Vailori hunters. They are warriors. They have weapons, armor, training. You are just a mechanic." Tai-Ho looked at Nari. She opened her eyes and looked back at him. Something passed between them. An understanding. A promise. "I am human," Tai-Ho said quietly. "That will be enough." The Vailori hunters arrived exactly when Borvak said they would. Their ship descended from the sky like a metal bird of prey, sleek and deadly. It landed outside Dust Haven with a roar of engines that shook the buildings and sent sand flying in all directions. 6 Vailori emerged from the ship. They wore combat armor that gleamed in the light of the twin suns, gold and red metal shaped to fit their dragon bodies. Each one was massive, at least 7 meters tall, with claws that could tear through steel and teeth that could crush bone. They moved like predators, confident and proud. Their leader was named Hyuk. He was the largest of them, with scales the color of dried blood and a long scar running across his face. He had been hunting escaped slaves for over 200 years. He had never failed to catch his target. The idea that he might fail today did not enter his mind. The other workers at Dust Haven had fled to their rooms. They wanted no part of this conflict. Borvak had locked himself in the control room, watching through cameras but refusing to help. The outpost felt empty and dead. Only Tai-Ho stood at the gate when the hunters approached. Hyuk stopped a few meters away and looked down at the small human, his lips pulled back in what might have been amusement, showing rows of sharp teeth. Smoke curled from his nostrils. "The human who digs in the sand," Hyuk said. His translator made his voice sound deep and cold. "I heard stories about you on my way here. They say you carried a Valori on your back through the burning desert. They say you are either very brave or very stupid." "People say many things," Tai-Ho replied. His voice was calm. "They also say you are hiding property that belongs to Lord Dokran, a slave named Nari. We are here to take her back. She is not property, she is a person." Hyuk laughed. The sound was like rocks grinding together. "She is whatever her master says she is. That is the law of the Dominion. That is the law of the universe. The strong own the weak. That is how things work." "Not here. Not today." The hunter's laughter stopped. His eyes, yellow and cold, studied Tai-Ho with new interest. "You are serious. You actually think you can stop us, 6 Valori warriors against 1 human mechanic?" He shook his head slowly. "I have killed hundreds of creatures in my life, human, beings much larger and stronger than you. What makes you think you are different?" Tai-Ho did not answer the question. Instead, he took a step backward, toward the gate of the outpost. "If you want her, come and take her." Then he turned and ran. Hayuk roared and charged after him, the other 5 hunters following close behind. They crashed through the gate like it was made of paper. The outpost was a maze of narrow corridors and small rooms, built for species much smaller than the Valori. The hunters had to squeeze through doorways and duck under low ceilings. They did not see the first trap until it was too late. A flash of bright light exploded in the corridor, blinding the lead hunters. Thermal flares, the kind mechanics used for welding, designed to produce intense heat and light. For humans, they were just uncomfortable. For Valori, whose eyes were sensitive to heat, they were agonizing. 2 hunters stumbled and fell, clawing at their faces. The others pushed forward. But Tai-Ho was already gone, disappearing around another corner. The second trap was mechanical. A heavy cargo loader, rigged to fall when someone tripped a hidden wire. It crashed down on top of another hunter, pinning him to the ground. He struggled and roared, but the machine was too heavy even for his strength. Hyuk was growing angry now. "Spread out," he commanded. "Find him and kill him." The remaining hunters split up, moving through different parts of the outpost. This was exactly what Tai-Ho wanted. He knew this outpost perfectly. He had worked here for 3 years, fixing every machine, crawling through every maintenance tunnel, learning every secret space. The Valori were powerful, but they were used to fighting in open spaces where their size and strength were advantages. Here, in these tight corridors, they were clumsy and slow. Tai-Ho used everything he had. He triggered pressure releases that filled rooms with steam, blinding the hunters. He collapsed ceiling panels onto their heads. He locked doors behind them, trapping them in dead-end corridors. He used electrical cables to shock them when they grabbed the wrong handles. And when one hunter finally caught him, grabbing him with massive claws and lifting him off the ground, Tai-Ho pressed a hidden button on his belt. A burst of compressed air shot into the hunter's face, carrying with it a powder that Tai-Ho had made from crushed heat stones. The powder ignited inside the hunter's nostrils, burning the sensitive tissue. The Valori dropped Tai-Ho and screamed, falling to his knees. One by one, the hunters fell, not dead, but defeated, burned, trapped, blinded, or simply exhausted from chasing shadows through an endless maze. After an hour of chaos, only Hayuk remained standing. He found Tai-Ho in the main repair bay. The human was tired, covered in cuts and bruises, bleeding from a wound on his forehead, but he was still standing. He was always still standing. "You are impressive," Hayuk admitted, "for a human. But this ends now." He lunged forward, claws reaching for Tai-Ho's throat. The human dove to the side, barely avoiding the strike. He rolled under a workbench and came up holding a plasma cutter. It was not much of a weapon against a Valori, but it was something. Hyuk swiped again. Tai-Ho ducked and slashed with the cutter, leaving a thin burn mark across the hunter's arm. Hayuk roared in pain and fury. He grabbed the workbench and threw it across the room like it weighed nothing. For 10 minutes, they fought. Tai-Ho could not win a direct fight, so he did not try. He ran, dodged, hid, and struck when Hayuk was not expecting it. He used his knowledge of Valori biology to target weak points, the soft scales under the arms, the sensitive eyes, the thin skin around the joints. He fought dirty, like a human. Finally, he led Hyuk under a massive repair crane. The hunter did not see the trap until Tai-Ho triggered it. The crane came down with a deafening crash, pinning Hyuk to the floor. The hunter struggled, but he could not move. He was trapped. Taiho stood over him, breathing hard. Blood dripped from his forehead onto the hunter's face. "Kill me then," HFY growled. "Finish it. That is how this works. The victor kills the defeated." Taiho looked at him for a long moment. Then he shook his head. "No," he said. "That is how your world works, not mine." He turned and walked toward the door. "You are free to leave when you can lift that crane. Take your hunters and go. Tell your master that Nari is not property anymore. Tell him that a human said so." Hyuk stared after him. In all his 200 years, no one had ever shown him mercy. He did not know what to do with it. "Human!" he called out. Taiho stopped but did not turn around. "What is your name?" "Taiho." HFY was silent for a moment. Then he spoke again, and his voice was different, softer, almost respectful. "I will remember that name, Taiho. I will remember what happened here today." Taiho walked out of the repair bay and did not look back. Behind him, Hyuk lay trapped under the crane, thinking about small creatures and big hearts, and wondering if perhaps the universe was stranger than he had ever imagined. The story spread like fire across the frontier worlds. It traveled from outpost to outpost, ship to ship, planet to planet. The tale of the human mechanic who buried himself in burning sand to save a stranger. The tale of the small creature who carried a dragon on his back. The tale of one man who fought 6 Valori hunters and won. Some people did not believe it at first. It sounded too much like a legend, like something from old stories told to children. But then they saw the footage from Dusthaven's security cameras. They saw Taiho running through corridors, setting traps, fighting with nothing but tools and courage. They saw the mighty Hyuk trapped under a crane, defeated by a creature half his size, and they began to wonder about humans. Lord Dokran never sent more hunters. The political cost was too high. Admitting that a human had defeated his best warriors would destroy his reputation. So he pretended that Nari had simply died in the crash, as he had originally planned. He pretended that nothing had happened at all, but everyone knew the truth. At Dusthaven, life changed slowly. The other workers started treating Taiho differently. They looked at him with new eyes, seeing something they had missed before. The aliens who had ignored him for years now nodded when he passed. Some even stopped to talk, to ask questions about humans and their strange ways. Nari stayed at the outpost. Her wings healed slowly, though they would never be as strong as before. Yuna removed the control collar from her neck on the 3rd day after the battle. Nari cried when it came off. Deep rumbling sounds that shook the walls. She had worn that collar for longer than Taiho had been alive. She began teaching the workers about Valori technology. Secrets that had been forbidden to other species for thousands of years, she shared freely. How their engines worked, how their shields were made, how their weapons could be improved. It was her way of repaying the debt she felt she owed. In return, the humans taught her about themselves. Yuna showed her human music, strange rhythms and melodies that Nari found surprisingly moving. Taiho told her human stories, tales of heroes who fought against impossible odds and sometimes won. The other humans shared their history, a story of a small species from a tiny planet who had reached the stars despite everything. Nari found herself fascinated by these creatures. They were so fragile. Their lives were so short. They had no scales, no claws, no fire. By all logic, they should have been conquered and forgotten long ago. But they had not been. There was something in humans that Nari had never seen in any other species. A stubborn refusal to accept defeat. A strange belief that every life had value. A willingness to help strangers, even enemies, simply because it was the right thing to do. One evening, several months after the battle, Nari found Taiho on the observation deck. He was watching the twin suns set, painting the desert in colors of gold and fire. She settled beside him, her massive body making the deck creak. "I have studied your species for many months now," she said. I have read your histories. I have listened to your stories. I have watched how you live and work together. She paused. I still do not understand you. Taiho smiled. What is there to understand? You are small. You are weak. You live such short lives. 80 years, perhaps 100 if you are lucky. That is nothing. I am over 400 years old, and I am still considered young among my people. She turned to look at him. And yet you throw yourselves into danger for strangers. You fight when you cannot win. You show mercy to those who showed you none. Why? Taiho thought about the question. The suns sank lower, touching the horizon. The sky turned red, then purple, then deep blue. Stars began to appear one by one, like tiny lights waking up. Because someone has to, he said finally. Because if we do not stand up for each other, all of us, human and alien alike, then what is the point of any of this? He gestured at the sky, at the stars, at the vast universe spread out above them. We are all so small compared to that. Our lives are all so short. If we do not use that time to help each other, to make things better, then we have wasted the only thing we truly have. Nari was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, she lowered her great head until her snout rested beside him. It was a gesture of deep respect among her people, something usually reserved for family or the most honored friends. I was wrong about your species, she said softly. We all were. The Dominion looks at humans and sees small, fragile creatures. We see short lives and weak bodies. We see things to be used and owned. She lifted her head and looked at the stars. But that is not what you are. Not really. What are we, then? Nari considered the question carefully. When she spoke again, her voice was full of wonder. You are brave, she said. You are kind. You are stubborn beyond all reason. You care about things that other species have forgotten how to care about. She looked at him. You are the future. I think the Dominion has made a terrible mistake by underestimating humanity. And I think one day the whole galaxy will understand what I have learned here. Taiho laughed softly. That might be giving us too much credit. Perhaps. But I do not think so. Nari settled more comfortably on the deck, her damaged wings folding against her back. I am 400 years old. I have seen many things. But I have never seen anything quite like you, Taiho. Quite like humans. She closed her eyes. I think I would like to see what you do next. If you will let me stay. You are welcome here for as long as you want. You are one of us now. One of you, Nari repeated. She sounded amused and pleased at the same time. One of you strange, brave, impossible humans. Yes, I think I like that. Above them, the stars shone down on a small outpost in a vast desert on a forgotten world. Inside, aliens and humans worked side by side, learning from each other, growing together. And somewhere out there, in the great darkness between the stars, others were hearing the story. Others were beginning to wonder about the small creatures from the tiny blue planet. They were beginning to wonder if perhaps the universe had underestimated humanity. And they were right. The twin suns rose again the next morning as they always did. The desert stretched red and endless under the orange sky. At Dust Haven, Taiho went back to work, fixing machines and helping whoever needed help. Nari worked beside him, learning and teaching in equal measure. It was just another day on the frontier. Just another day of small kindnesses and stubborn hope. But it was also the beginning of something larger, something that would spread across the stars and change everything. A message carried by travelers and traders, by stories and songs. The message was simple. Humanity was small. Humanity was fragile. Humanity lived short lives on a tiny world in an unimportant corner of the galaxy. But humanity was not to be underestimated. Not anymore. Not ever again.